E3 2017 is now a thing of the past. It was a year with some exciting announcements, some pretty good updates, some disappointing showings, and as always, a lot of debates on who won E3. But how do we decide who wins E3? E3 is the Super Bowl of gaming. We all eagerly anticipate it throughout the year. And just like the Super Bowl, we all have a favorite that we pull for to win it all. Well, this is a bad comparison for a lot of us. Who watching this video cares about sports? I mean, why did I use this comparison? What was I thinking? Let's put it this way. E3 is a time of the year where we all pick sides and we hope that the guy that we pick does better than the other guy, more than any other time of the year. And we all watch ads, and for whatever reason, we're okay with it. Are we all on the same page now? Okay, for this video, I want to look at it based on more things than just the games that we personally enjoy. For instance, we all know I love Nintendo, but based on this criteria, they've had some pretty bad years in the past, especially in the dying days of the Wii and Wii U. On the other hand, we all know that I don't typically care much about third-party publishers. Regardless, I can tell you without hesitation, Bethesda killed it their first couple of showings at E3. And so we're clear, this is about more than the presentations themselves. This is about the long haul, so post and pre-show announcements count toward the final outcome. So with all that being said, what in my mind determines who wins E3? I like to base my criteria on three major things. First and foremost, how exciting were the announcements made by publishers? Did they have any out of left field that nobody expected? Or even better, did they have any Half-Life 3 confirmed type moments? E3 is increasingly becoming more and more about surprises in the digital age, and in a lot of ways it always has been, but never more than it is now. These days we can get updates any time of the year thanks to things like Nintendo Directs or the off-the-cuff announcements on Twitter like Red Dead Redemption 2. But there are a few times that publishers can expect to have the attention of everyone, whether they're existing fans or not. So it's essential to make unexpected announcements that can take over the conversation while they have the chance. But there's a balancing act with the first element of winning E3. There's no reason to announce a game that no one expects and will inevitably be excited for regardless of the time that it's announced if it's nowhere near being done. But there are exceptions to this rule. If the game is something that fans have been asking for relentlessly for years, announcing a bit early on in development is fine. Announcements like Death Stranding being in development are important because it sets fans at ease knowing that a developer they love is actively working on something new. However, games like Final Fantasy VII Remake on the other hand did not need to be announced this early. That game is nowhere near being released and they know it. That's why they put early development all over the trailer. And that is the perfect transitional point for the second basis of winning E3, imminence. Like I said, thanks to things like streaming services and social media, it's a lot easier for publishers to effectively promote their games to the public year-round. The increase in visibility and accessibility lessened the need for long drawn-out hype cycles. Because of that, I see no need for there to be any game shown at more than one E3 consecutively. Definitely no need to show off a game more than a maximum of 2 shows overall. All that would say to me is that a publisher is scraping at the bottom of the barrel for announcements that people would care about. It feels like that one friend that posts, "New year, new me, this my year," every year, but changes or does nothing of consequence. All it does is pad out the show and unnecessarily raise expectations. It was really exciting to see Watch Dogs when it was revealed, but not so much so in the 2 years that followed when we continued to see the game over and over again, only to have ultimately been let down when the game didn't fully follow through on what we were initially shown. Particularly egregious examples are Last Guardian, Final Fantasy 15, and Kingdom Hearts 3. Though to be fair, Last Guardian and Final Fantasy at least did us a solid and eventually went radio silent until the games were close enough to being finished. But that doesn't change the fact that these games have all been in very public development cycles for upwards of a decade. Games take a long time to make sometimes, I get it, but publishers know when their games aren't ready, and shouldn't speak on them extensively until they are nearing completion. But they tend to do it anyway. My guess would be it's for shareholders, and that's all well and good, but shareholders don't crown E3 winners, we do. Well, they kinda do with their money and all, but that's beside the point. Anyway, on to the final point of importance for winning E3. Who cares about your announcement? Really, who cares? A company can have the best announcement of all times in their own minds, but if the public doesn't catch on, at the end of the day, did your announcement really matter? This tweet has been floating around, and I think it's because it's very true. And that's not a bad thing. You gotta play to your base. Of course, in a show about games that has traditionally been dominated by console gamers, biggest announcement is going to be something that revolves around a console game, and at that, a game's mechanic more than a spec sheet. And that's what this part is all about. Play to your base and make the announcements that will matter most to the biggest portion of the E3 viewership. But not just the people that will watch something like the PC gaming show. After all, who's watching that? Like 4 people? In 2016, Sony dominated much of the E3 talk because of their focus on games, and Nintendo even managed to demand the lion's share of the conversation, even though they only brought 2 games. This is because they managed to bring games that have large, passionate fan bases that were excited to experience the next entries in franchises like Zelda, God of War, and even media giants like Spider-Man and Pokemon. But again, I want to stress that they need to balance that with how close those games are to releasing. Nintendo reveals Zelda games way too early. Sony reveals, well, pretty much all of their games way too early. The perfect balance of this was demonstrated masterfully by Bethesda back in 2015 with Fallout 4. They revealed a game they knew their fans wanted and released it 4 months later. That is a window all companies should strive for. But those are all past E3s. With all of this in mind, who would I say won this year's E3? Well, if I'm being honest, Nintendo. With Ubisoft following closely behind. They both announced games that are new, exciting, a fair amount of which are within reach, and had some big confirmations to boot, like Beyond Good and Evil 2, Metroid Prime 4, Pokemon for Switch, and even for the games that we already knew about, they demoed really well. Super Mario Odyssey's probably the biggest game of the show, other than Star Wars Battlefront 2, which if you look at the social media charts and viewership on YouTube, that clearly was the winner. So even though no one announcement was technically the biggest from these showings, they had the most announcements that were really big. The other companies struggled to come close in even one of these areas, let alone striking a balance as well as Nintendo and Ubisoft did. But those are my thoughts. What do you think? Do you agree with my assessment? Am I just a fanboy? Let me know in the comments. And hey, if you like this video, maybe click the like button, and even more importantly, subscribe. Hey, maybe even click the bell? I don't know. Anyway, that's it for me. See you next week.